All right, we're going to be reading My Dungeon Shook, Letter to My Nephew on the 100th Anniversary of Emancipation, which is an open letter by James Baldwin. Now, one of the two main focuses in reading this text will be analyzing rhetorical devices. You should know that a rhetorical device is used to convey meaning or achieve a purpose. When used effectively, they capture attention, evoke emotion, ignite critical thinking on the part of the reader and audience. Now, we've used various rhetorical devices in order to analyze the literature that we've read so far this year. But in this particular text, there are three that we're going to focus on. The first is paradox. A paradox is a statement that appears contradictory or absurd, but when thought through can be considered a possible truth. Baldwin uses this device to get his reader to think deeply about familiar ideas. For example, the text states, "It is the innocence which constitutes the crime." Now, this is a paradox because when you first look at this, somebody that's innocent cannot also have committed a crime. But there's a deeper meaning to what he's saying, the innocence which constitutes the crime. And I'm going to ask you to consider what this deeper meaning is, given the background of our speaker or our author and his projected audience. The second rhetorical device we're going to look at is repetition. It's the use of the same word, phrase, or sentence more than once for effect. Baldwin uses repetition to express deep emotion. For example, the sentence, "You must accept them and accept them with love." That word accept is repeated. We've talked about this throughout the year, but I really want to draw in on the idea that if something is repeated, you are meant to pay more attention to it. There perhaps is a deeper meaning here. So any repetition used by an author or a speaker you should assume has an intended purpose. Now, allusion, which is the third of the three devices we're going to be looking at with this text. Allusion is an indirect reference to a person, place, event, or literary work that the author believes readers will know and understand. If you look at the cartoon on the left, it says you're a Grinch, right? Most of us will recognize if you call somebody a Grinch, you're referring to that green creature that hates all humans or, Christmas or everything else. We recognize that reference when we use it, right? In this example, there's a different allusion made. So your countrymen have caused you to be born under conditions not very far removed from those described for us by Charles Dickens in the London of more than 100 years ago. So in this particular allusion, Baldwin is referencing Charles Dickens, who is a very well-known author, British author, who wrote about the cruel, disgusting, gross conditions of London specifically, but other parts of the UK, and how there were debtors' prisons and people were treated poorly just because of one situation or where they come from, etc. So in this instance, the author is expecting the audience to recognize this thing. All right, genre elements of an open letter, because we are going to be reading an open letter. It's addressed to a specific person, but published for a wider readership. So it means you write a letter to one person, but you're not just sending it to that one person. You're putting it in a place where more people can read it. For example, in a newspaper, or you're publishing it on Facebook, for example, or Twitter, which seems to be quite popular these days. They're generally written to present an idea, protest, or appeal. So we're typically putting something out there just to put an idea in somebody's head or trying to get them to do something. And finally, they convey a message to its intended audience. There is a very clear message in an open letter. There's typically a clear message in a letter in general, but especially open letters. You should be looking for what is this person trying to tell me? Because there is a very large indicator. Unlike a speech, this is published a little bit differently, but still the same conventions from when we analyze speeches are here. So the second component of what we're going to be working on in this text is analyzing audience and message. Now, we've worked on this in the past. We're going to do some more specific examples throughout this particular text. Just as a reminder, audience is the person or persons the author expects to read his or her work. James Baldwin addresses his letter to his nephew, but also published it in his groundbreaking essay collection, The Fire Next Time. You know, if somebody is writing a personal letter, the message will be different than writing a letter that's published. Yeah, it's addressed to one person, but published where many, many, many people can read this. Okay, so that changes what the potential, who the potential audience is. As you read, think about the information Baldwin includes, which details are intended for his nephew and which are directed to a wider audience, because there is a difference. Now, message, which you should know, is the most important idea he or she tries to convey to the audience. Baldwin uses language with specific connotations to convey his message. Now, connotation and denotation can be rather tricky. We're going to take this from a one-sided perspective and just talk about connotation today. Connotation is the emotional response evoked with a particular word. Should say word, not worked, sorry. For example, there's a positive connotation when someone is described as determined. If you describe somebody as determined, it means they're really hardworking and they'll do what they have to do to succeed. However, if you describe a person as stubborn, there's a very negative connotation associated with this, meaning if I call somebody stubborn, it's not really a good thing. It's very harsh. If you look on the right, is referring to somebody as a guest has a positive connotation. It means like they're welcome in your home. If you refer to somebody as an intruder, that's a very negative connotation, because if somebody's intruding in your home, they're not supposed to be there and they're there anyways. Okay? Now, connotation differs from denotation in the fact that connotation is the emotional response that we feel with a word, and denotation is the dictionary definition. Okay? So authors, when we talk about diction, they play with connotation and denotation because we are playing with what our audience is potentially going to see in our text. Okay, so keep that in mind. Notice when Baldwin employs language to elicit an emotional response from the audience. How does the use of language shape your understanding of his message? Now, in this text, we're also going to touch on language conventions just really quickly, something you should already know, but I feel like it's important to touch on. Sentence structure. In order to make writing appeal to readers, authors use a variety of sentence structures. Some of the techniques authors use include alternating long and short sentences to produce a rhythm, using short sentences to emphasize a point, use a variety of sentence structures to prevent monotony. Meaning, we don't want that this is dog is good is great, like stupid one sentence structure sentences over and over and over again, because it's really, really boring. It's like, ugh, right? So they mix it up, kind of like you would put different things in your salad. You don't just eat lettuce, you put like tomatoes and onions and croutons and dressing and, you put some variety in there, right? You want to do the same thing with your sentence structure, because that keeps the attention of your audience, and it can also help drive in a particular point. And Baldwin does absolutely do this. Most speeches or letters will do some sort of this concept. Now, I'm not going to make you do the vocab assignment for this particular text, but notice there are vocabulary words on the right side of the screen. If you do not know what these words are, you're going to want to look them up because they appear in the text. The definitions are also in your book, so just as you are reading this particular letter, make sure you're looking to see what the words you don't understand are. It's really hard to understand a text if you don't understand some of the key words that they're using, okay? So I'm going to do the honor code here. If you don't understand a word, please look it up. but you do not have to submit a formal assignment or a formal vocab for this particular lesson as of right now. All right, have a great day.